Hey Chris, welcome to Bite Sized. Appreciate you jumping on.
Yeah, it is my pleasure. My pleasure.
Awesome. So you're a legend in the game. I know you very well, but for anybody who doesn't, why don't you give a quick intro into you, your career to date, and what you're focused on moving forward?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm probably the newest member to the Mint team. I'm heading up our strategy and super excited to be on board. My background is I've been in ecom for a while now, in marketing for 10 years, in ecom probably the last 6 or 7 years. My last agency I was at was Common Thread Collective. It was originally based in Orange County. Now it's kind of all over. It's, the post-pandemic remote world. It's everywhere. But I started there as the strategist number two on a team of 15 people, grew with them to 160 people, and ended up leading our growth strategy department and had 10 strategists, two managers under me, and really got to learn firsthand kind of the e-com game, from tiny clients to big players like Wilson Sports. Kind of got to see the whole gamut. So it's been a journey. And then more recently, I've been helping, even before Mint, helping a brand called Mate the Label navigate the growth, taking a really great sustainable brand and say, how do we expand growth? How do we do that in a way that's going to help us set up for future retail, all that fun stuff. So I've been helping out with digital and growth for Mate the Label. So that's a bit of the story to this point. And now I'm on board to help us take Mint to the next level.
Yes, quite the resume. We're very lucky to have you. So with that being said, let's do a quick state of the union. So, DTC e-commerce during the pandemic, post-pandemic. What's your take on where the ecosystem is at the moment and all the market shifts, and how's that shaping your thinking of where e-commerce and DTC is going into 2023?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of doom and gloom happening right now. Oh no, ecom's over, DTC's dead, and everyone just run to retail, which is fun and it makes the clicks work on LinkedIn. But I think it's a bit overblown. So I think 2020, 2021 showed us just the potential these systems have. And so obviously we saw that massive boom. Some brands just had phenomenal growth. I know that even brands like Mate just saw, things like sweatpants just fly off the shelves. And so I think we're seeing a contraction, and that totally makes sense for where things are today. A lot of brands, especially right now, are feeling some pain. I think as we're recording this, November, retail sales dropped 0.6% in the US, which is not a small number. It sounds small, but it's a pretty significant drop. And so we see this boom of 2020, 2021 to then December, like now, November, where we're seeing consumers kind of slowing down their purchases, acquisitions expensive. I'm still bullish on e-commerce. If you look at the trend line, it's growing. It's not contracting. We just a little step back over this last year, but overall we're up and still growing in e-com. So I think the DTC's dead, retail's the future. That's a little overblown. I think it's just we don't see quite the efficiency and the arbitrage we saw before, but there's still a massive future for e-com.
Yeah, I think as well, a lot of brands and companies, they saw that big boom during the pandemic and made some misassumptions around where that trend line would continue afterwards, right? When the world
Absolutely.
normalized slightly again. And so to say it's down, is it actually down as to where it was going to go if there had been no pandemic, or is it down against the highs of the inflated inflated e-commerce success that people were seeing during the pandemic?
Absolutely. I think everyone I had conversation with in 2020, the 2021, I said, don't base your forecast on 2020. And everyone nodded and said, absolutely, we're not going to do that. And they bought way too much inventory.
Yeah.
And so that created this other issue. I think that's making it really hard, where you have brands who had way too much inventory. I mean, even big box stores had this problem. Target had way too much inventory, and for the first time had to really liquidate and push through product, just because they had so much on the shelves. And so, yeah, absolutely. It's a little bit of a reaction. And I think we're still in it, to be quite honest. I think right now with brands, there's a reaction to, oh no, inflation, oh no, interest rates. Let's just pull back on all the spend. Let's pull back on all the marketing dollars so we can just hunker down and make it through.
Yeah.
But that's kind of a flawed logic. It's an idea that there won't be new competitors that will show up. There's a
Yeah.
sense that people are thinking, oh, there won't be other markets that open up that will take that spot. So I think the reaction is still happening for a lot of brands reading too many headlines.
Yeah. There's that chart I saw. I think it was an Ogilvy piece of data. What happens when brands stop marketing, and it's just a steady decline of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I think
Yeah.
I understand the nervousness when you look at macroeconomic conditions, but you still got to find efficiencies, find a way of still being relevant, getting in front of potential consumers, versus your phrase, hunkering down too much, because you're going to get at a standstill. You're going to stagnate.
Yeah. And I think it's really easy to be pessimistic because it, shifts some of the blame away from just, decision making and long-term thinking. If it's old market conditions, then it's not your fault. But I think there's a small corner of optimists who are seeing where we are. If we kind of zoom out from a technology standpoint, we have more tools than ever, even over the last 2 years developed. I'm thinking about some of the first party data solutions we have. I mean, the guys at No Commerce are doing a great job helping people figure out the attribution problem using very simple tools. I think about even Shopify in the last few years dropping the cost for new consumers to start stores and removing that kind of barrier to entry. So there's so much in our favor, but it's not the thing that you're going to find in New York Times saying, "Hey, I think it's great." It's a sense of it's going to be tough to start a brand today. Which, look, it's never been easy to grow a brand. But it's a little easier than it was before, if we have to be honest.
True. Yeah, true. We forget that, right? You mentioned the tech tools. I mean, we partner with Triplewell, which does a great job. That type of data wasn't available in such a clear, easy, single dashboard kind of way. So yes, the game's changed a bit, but there's a lot more tools that actually help us. So you're bullish on ecom still for next year, which is good to hear. So breaking that down a bit more granular, what are the biggest opportunities for brands?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as you even mentioned Triple Whale and tools like that, I think we wouldn't even see the explosion of the North Beams and Triple Whales unless we had the iOS 14 issue. I think when things were great and it was just simpler to run ads, you didn't have to worry about attribution. You're like, just spend the money and then it's fine. What I think it's done is it's forced all of us to consider some of these challenges and do good marketing. And so one of the things I'll say is first party data has not been a new idea of us owning our own data set and understanding our customers. It's not new. But to DTC people, it kind of is, in the sense that we never really had to. We just trusted, the all-knowing algorithm to find the customer, and who cares what? We don't have to know them. It knows them. And I think that's the first thing that's an opportunity, is this deep understanding of customers. This almost going back to first principles of, as an e-com store, you have direct access. You don't have a big box between you and the customer that's going to filter out the data and maybe get some sell-through information. You have direct access. And so we see this, and I'm maybe jumping ahead, but we see this in things like building communities. That's core. To understand what they care about is going to be the future of growth for most brands. And so first party data, understanding your customer base is a huge opportunity moving forward.
Yeah, agreed.
Another one I'll add in that is, we see brands even saying as much as, privacy and protections coming in with that. So that's being forced by those changes and shifts to a privacy first world. It is a sense of saying, can we provide enough value so that people are willing to share what they want to share with us? And that's not just a given that people are just going to hand you their information, but saying, can we create an exchange, which is pushing a ton of effort and energy to top of funnel. So instead of it being just about transaction, it's saying, hey, we need to build enough trust so that when they show up, they're willing to give us something of information around who they are, what they care about, and ultimately then the purchase, so we can stay in touch with them. So I think that's also causing a shift in market. That is a huge, super opportunity for D2C brands who have typically been super bottom of funnel.
Yeah. And that's something we speak a lot about, right? That convergence or unity of traditionally separated brand and performance. Keen to just have you expand on how you're thinking about that moving into next year. Just the future of the space. I think I did a post about it on LinkedIn. I think brand and performance is in the separation has been a construct of budgets and teams and P&Ls and everything else. And I think especially for e-commerce brands and D2C brands, it's one thing. You build brand performance. What's your take on that? How should brands be thinking about it?
Yeah, I can't agree more. I think seeing your post on that, I agree that the delineation between these two groups that we love to talk about and love to create this enemy between, the brand people don't really like the performance people, or the performance people are just not artists, don't appreciate the storytelling. I think it's a lot of just people making excuses for why something's not performing. And the idea that these two things are separated, I think you posted about this pretty clearly. Customers don't see it that way. No one else other than the brand and maybe the agency sees it that way. And so there is so much around where it's on a new concept. Again, I think this is probably 2023 is the year of rediscovery of old principles, but it is about a thoughtfulness that ties every stage of the interaction together. The funnel is overused. We see the triangle all the time, but let's just be honest. If more brands actually did that, focused on the entirety of the funnel, there wouldn't be so much chaos between brand people and performance people. Because what's missing, I think, in a lot of these brands and where there's an opportunity is that middle layer, that sense of the consideration. We think about the awareness at the top of funnel. So brands thinking, hey, and they get that. They see the Super Bowl ad that's just about, tell me about the Oreos, tell me about the tires. But then you go down the bottom funnel and you see transactional, and it's just like, buy this product, here's a connection, here's a sale. But this middle of consideration is where all of the good opportunity lives. It is the place where it's harder to measure, but it's where you build loyalty at. It's the answering their questions. It's the considering their resistance to the product, overcoming some of their resistance to price. All of that happens between the middle of the trust built at awareness and the transaction built at the very bottom of the funnel. And so I think a lot of brands kind of just left the messy middle, that space to kind of be figured out. Maybe, we'll just they'll figure it out between now and then. And it's where brands should focus on today. I don't think every brand should just jump to top of funnel and build like a Super Bowl commercial. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, instead of being so focused on, is this ad ROAS positive all the time and weighing everything to that single metric, thinking more holistically to how are we introducing the product, answering questions that they have, and ultimately building community so that when we get that customer, when they purchase, they refer, they share, they are more valuable to us over the long term, which brings together that CAC and LTV issue we see in brands of the cost of acquiring customers getting higher. So LTV needs to match it. That, I think, is discovered in consideration in the middle of the funnel. So that's kind of what I think is a rough estimate of where brands should focus and a little bit more of where I think it's going in the future.
Totally agree. Great answer. That's the MO.
We'll see if it plays out, right? It's still a big year next year.
Yeah, exactly. So changing gears slightly, you worked with how many brands?
Over 200 brands.
Okay. So when you're working with a new brand or whatever it might be, what are the first things you look at, maybe in order or not in order, when you're trying to understand how to build or develop a growth strategy for them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's one I love. It's why I'm in this space. I think growth strategists don't always get the most attention. We're not the most visually designing and not necessarily the finance people, somewhere the hybrid of the middle.
Yeah.
And for me, I am hyper-focused, almost obsessive about what is the goal. In everything in my life, by the way, I'm this way. So it's maybe just a personal issue of I need to know the goal. I need to know what is the win, where are we going, why are we doing this? And so that's typically where I start, is a simple question of what is the goal for the brand? And typically I'll phrase it in some sort of kind of dichotomy, something that's going to create tension to make them choose an initiative. Lots of brands will tell me growth and they want efficiency. And we all know as performance marketers that you typically can get both, just not at the same time. You can't always scale and always have efficiency at the exact same moment. There's some rare cases like we had recently with one of our brands that you do, but those are rare. Typically, it's a sense of there's maybe one we got to focus on first and the other. Let's start with the goal and usually start there. Are we trying to scale this to get customers in the door? Maybe you're a CPG brand trying to be bought by Coca-Cola or PepsiCo, and you just need to get customers in the door and show that they stay, and you're not that concerned about efficiency. Awesome, let's do that. Maybe you're more of a hard goods brand where you have to make that first purchase profitable because there is no LTV with this brand. Okay, great. But we need to know what the goal is. From there, I typically use a little bit of last year's data to help us understand what could possibly happen next year. There's a caveat there, right? When we're forecasting with the brand where they should go and where they should focus, there is a bit of an issue here where the past can't always predict the future because the brand should be changing. But it is a good baseline. When we're trying to forecast, one of my mentors said this, that it's about where we're importantly wrong. Where are we wrong in important ways than where we're right? Because where we're wrong is hopefully things that won't kill us. Things like, for example, one of the forecasts I did recently with the brand, we set it pretty low, actually. It was pretty conservative based on the history of how that brand had gone. They'd been down for most of the year.
Yeah.
And so we forecasted them to be close to baseline, to be back on track to growth, but not up. And in November, we not only erased the deficit, but brought them back to kind of on track to be to last year. And if we continue, we will be in a healthy trajectory to be in terms of next year, 2023, what they did last year. So it's a really fun place to be wrong, where I didn't think we would actually hit that sales goal, but the performance of that offer did way better than I could forecast. Yeah. So I look at forecasts based on last year. The last thing I'll say is from there, what are the levers I can pull that could be scenarios that I could play? So for example, if I'm seeing in a brand that they're having really strong TikTok traffic and performance, there's an opportunity there to think about, okay, if we double down on creators, what could be possible? If we just use a little bit of history, what can we do in the future? And the goal is to show them where are their opportunities and what are the constraints of those, so they can choose. They can choose their own adventure in that way. So that's a little bit of a summary. It's a sense of where's the goal, forecasting on last year's revenue, saying here's what you've done last year historically, here's a curve or kind of direction where you could be next in this next year, and then what are some things that are working where they could win, and maybe show some scenarios against that, and then highlighting where we're importantly wrong.
Yeah, makes sense. And how important is it, and I kind of know the answer, to not just be looking at, you know, in-platform performance and historical trends, but actually also understanding a brand's margins, a brand's return rates. Do you see what I mean? Like some of these metrics that I think, you know, I know we prioritize and everything else. What data points are you looking at as well within the actual ecosystem of the brand versus just their marketing platforms to help you understand, you know, for brands that maybe don't have as much experience of things, if they're a newer brand, like what would you be looking at?
Yeah, I try to tread this lightly because I know it's kind of an intimate question to be like, show me your P&L. It's kind of like, hey, it's the first date and they're asking to have this intimate look at the business. But, you know, I think it keeps agencies honest about, again, this is a business transaction. You're asking us to grow your business. And so there's a cost that we have. That's a fixed cost of people against the opportunity for you. And so, so there is a sense that we always want as raw of that information of how do you make money, right? And that comes down to contribution margin and ultimately your net profit. Like, how do you walk out of your dollars in the bank? If you do that, you're going to be happy with me. I'm going to be happy with you. All things look great. I think what can happen is brands either don't know their numbers that way. So maybe you're talking to your marketing manager who isn't exposed to the P&L, doesn't understand where they sit in terms of profit. That's a very obvious case in more enterprise clients. But on brands that are smaller, where they have a closer understanding, they may not be happy where those things are, and they want it to be better. So they're afraid to share. So I try to be a bit gentle, say, let me just say, our goal is to get you to where you want to go. It may not be today, but we have to have an honest understanding of what today looks like. Ray Dalio says it this way, like, we want to know reality. We want to understand reality. That's the most fair way to navigate life.
Yeah.
But from there, and taking that bottom, what is that number? Typically, after we subtract marketing costs, your OpEx, your cost of goods, the bottom profit. We want to say from there, how do we think about growing that, or even sacrificing it slightly for the opportunity for future growth? Some brands, they need to hit a certain threshold and they unlock even more margin. One brand I was talking to, they needed to get a certain number of kind of SKU sets and growth, and they could switch warehouses and drop their cost by 30%, which is fantastic, but there was a bar there. All of that translates to more money I can spend, right? As a marketer, as someone on our side, kind of working in the agency side, we're spending dollars. And so we need to know how much we can spend and what is my ceiling for that. And that is the determiner of how fast we can go. If I can burn a lot faster up front, go really hard out the gate, it's incredible. And that means I can help support them on some of the growth goals that they have. If cash is tight and cash flow is tight, that limits how much I can spend. Having that awareness with our teams, and we bring this all the way through the agency, is saying we want to be aware of that limit so that we can be great partners. So we're not putting the brand in a position that breaks the business or limits its ability to work with us in the long term. We want to be connected for years, not just the next 6 months or just for Black Friday.
Meaningful business results, not transactional service providers. I agree. Amazing. Yeah. Chris, I've got some rapid fire questions. Well, kind of rapid fire. We'll see how rapid they are based on your answers.
Yeah, I'll try to keep it short to make it rapid.
You're good. You're good. Do you think TikTok will get banned in the US? And if so, where will creators and users go? What platform will they jump to?
So I don't think it's going to get banned, because I think all of the constituents in the different districts for senators would rally and rise up. And I think it's not in their interest to do that. So I think no. I think there'll probably be some data protection components that the US will use just because of the fear of China's growth. But hypothetically speaking, let's say if it was, that's a fun question. I'm kind of bullish on YouTube. Now, look, it's not the most I know where people would want to go. Put it in Google, put it back in Instagram. Maybe Instagram will figure out some sort of product that will work there. Yeah. But I mean, the amount of time people are spending on video and Instagram's lack of ability to really make reels take off, I'm kind of saying, look, there could be some YouTube action here that people go on to, because it's the second largest search engine. And I think it is a huge opportunity. So yeah, I'm kind of saying YouTube moving forward.
Yeah. I'm going to see where the poll ends on LinkedIn. Reels is winning right now, but I kind of agree. Yeah. I think YouTube makes a lot of sense. I think maybe some of the barriers around it, if it happens, which I don't think it will either, by the way. I don't think it will. I think there'll be some data protection, but who knows? I think one of the barriers of the YouTube element, though, is it's are brands playing there as much as they are TikTok and Instagram when it comes to conversion? Do you see what I mean? That's where the growth of creators and everything on TikTok is coming from.
Yep, absolutely. And I'll just land with that part, is that I think it's reach also. But the reason why I'm bullish on it and saying that is because I think that considered purchase, that middle layer, that's the growth opportunity. There's a lot that happens on YouTube, reviews, how-tos, lots of opportunity in white space that isn't being used. I think Instagram, Reels, that's fine. And that's a place I think people can naturally go instantly. But the question is, where's the opportunity, the arbitrage? I think it's there.
Yeah, agreed. Okay, next question. Is Facebook advertising dead?
Absolutely not. I mean, look,
would you have a job if it was?
Yeah, look, there's just the amount of dollars being spent there. No, I think obviously people would love to say it is because Mark laid off 15,000 people, whatever the number was. And just that just shows how much money they had at the time. But no, absolutely not. So the best performing channel, hands down, across the boards, no questions asked, that is still winning. There's concerns. That's why everyone's diversifying, but it's still the massive opportunity for brands today.
Agreed. You mentioned Zuckerberg, the metaverse. Overhyped nonsense or the future?
Oh, maybe not Mark's version. I mean, based on the Oculus Pro, they don't say sales, but I don't think anyone's buying that. I think here's let's take the meat, leave the bones. I think the idea of brands investing in digital assets for membership, Yeah, absolutely. Nike's already kind of showing their hand with their I think dot swoosh. But I don't think the idea that we're going to all just live our digital lives is going to be the thing for this next 5 years. I think we have some room to go. And part of that's a computing problem, right? It's just not fast enough to support what that would need to look like. Yeah. Now, could I be wrong? Absolutely. Maybe Apple comes up with a great new headset that just pushes everyone over. But for now, I'm saying bearish on that one.
Okay. Yeah, I share the same sentiment. Okay, quickly, what would the number one piece of advice for an e-com operator that you'd give if they're doing under 10 million a year in revenue?
Yeah, I think one thing is just don't read the news. Take some time to keep your head down and focus on best practices. Look, if I had a nickel for every brand where I say, hey, when's the last time you talked to a customer directly and asked them about their experience? And they say, oh, I haven't talked to them in 6 months. It makes me weep inside. Look, I'm not an operator the same way that brands are, so I can't vouch and say, hey, I've grown this specific brand myself this way. But I can say is I've spent a lot of time with a lot of brands that have won and have grown and have been acquired or scaled. And all of them had this focus, this maniacal focus on customers, having them in their offices, interviewing them, calling them up, just on the blue, sending them a gift card saying, hey, we'll just give you this $50 to Amazon if you tell me more about what you hate about our product. I think that's a huge, huge, huge win. Why? Ad copy, it's the best stuff from the customer's mouth. There's only so much you can get from a review someone typed in kind of, lazily after an email flow. It's a whole different story if they've had an hour conversation with you and out of that comes gold of copy. Yeah. So I think talking to customers is underrated. The second thing is I wouldn't diversify too quickly. With that complexity, if you have an agency partner that can help you handle the complexity, great. Diversify, test, try. But I think people burn a lot of money unnecessarily because they're too spread thin on lots of other things. Running a brand itself is hard. Diversifying channels and making them win is hard. Getting learnings and scaling those learnings is ultra hard. And that's what I spent my full-time job doing that. Yeah. So I think that's an opportunity for brands to say, look, slow down, let some other people take the reins on that, or focus on a few channels, stay there for now until you can get scale.
How would that advice change for brands doing over 10 mil?
Oh, yeah. Well, I would say the idea, one thing is that there's this huge popular push, last year, 2 years ago, to in-house everything. And then they realized how expensive that is. I think the opportunity is to bring on great partners for specific channels. I am biased. All right. Look, shameless plug. Come work with us. But I think it's true, though. The economics are really hard to justify having this massive marketing team, especially when you're seeing a recession, potentially a downturn. And so what I would say is I would make it my obsession to find a partner that is creative testing really, really well. There's so much there to learn. Even though the platforms are moving to more automated setups, let's just take a couple examples. Google's moving to PMax and Performance Max, right? Basically fully automated. Advantage Plus, Advantage shopping campaigns, almost fully automated. And so if creative is really the only lever you have, creative testing now becomes the value add of the agency, not just the creative you make, but the insights and what to make next. And so I'd say find a partner at 10 million, find a partner who can just be your creative testing engine and push you while you focus on evergreen and keeping the business lights on. They should be challenging the status quo for you.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, listen, dude, it's called Bite Size, so we've got to wrap it up because it's meant to be snackable content, but we could talk for hours. There's so much there when it comes to creative testing. We'll have to do a separate session on it, but really appreciate you jumping on. And
absolutely, it's my pleasure, and it's always fun to challenge the norms and what's happening next. Look, I was thinking we were disagreeing on something, but maybe next one we'll talk about where we're disagreeing. Sure actually, maybe to land on one thing that we disagree on. Fear of God or represent.
Oh shit! You can't do that to me. That's like picking a favorite child. I can't.
Choose a baby. Choose a baby.
I can't do it.
Oh man. Okay, well you heard it here, folks. You can't choose. So
I know. I love them. I love them both dearly, dearly. All right, bro. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks.